In our world of instant messaging, texts, and emails, face-to-face communication is a lot less common than it used to be. And when we do things less frequently, we aren't really great at doing them when we do have the opportunity. So today, in the third of our 4-part series on communication, we're going to talk about the must-have elements for a positive face-to-face conversation business meeting. Stick around.
GILD Coaching. More success, less stress.
Face-to-face conversations are less common these days, so we are not as good at them as we used to be. And that's really a shame, because in other forms of communication, a lot of intention and meaning is lost. Face-to-face is when we really have the opportunity to convey our full point, not just using words, but also inflection, facial expression, full body language, and our energetic emphasis. So you want to make sure that you are nailing it when you have a face-to-face meeting. You don't want to give off any negative impressions, and you want to make sure that your meetings are successful. The end goal of any meeting is a positive outcome, and part of having a positive outcome is having the other person have positive thoughts and feelings about you. Whether or not it's a difficult conversation is one thing, but the way that you carry yourself during the conversation can make or break that person's impression of you. So my very first tool for conversations is to breathe. Not necessarily that deeply or that loudly in the middle of a conversation. But remember, most people throughout the day only use about 1/3 of their lung capacity. When we're not filling our lungs with oxygen on a regular basis, our whole body tenses up, and our brains are built to work utilizing oxygen. So if you give it more oxygen, it can think more clearly. It can more effectively execute its job. So remember, before you go into a face-to-face meeting and during the meeting as much as possible, take deep breaths. It doesn't have to be loud like I just did. Doesn't have to make your chest swell so that someone notices it, but just deeply breathe. You can use the opportunity when the other person is talking to breathe, and you can nod and do other things to detract from them thinking that, you're breathing really deeply. Certainly don't sigh or seem as though you're yawning or anything like that. But deep breathing, inflating your lungs, actually massages the vagus nerve along your spinal column, and that nerve helps to relax you. So especially if you're having a tough conversation, your breath is always there with you in the moment, and it's always your best friend. Number 2, pay attention to your tone. Let's just take the phrase, "you would know." This can be taken in 3 different ways. It can be sarcastic, "you would know." It could be taken as complimentary, "well, you would know." And it could just be taken as complete inquisition, "you would know this." So if you just take that one phrase and you use different verbal inflection, you can change the meaning, you can change the energy behind it, you can change the interpretation of it. A lot of phrases in the English language are like that. It's not a black and white language. There's a lot of different areas of gray. The word sorry is another good example of this. You can say, "Oh, sorry," where there's genuine remorse behind it. Or when you make a little kid apologize for something that they're not really sorry for and they go, "sorry," you know that there's not authenticity behind that. So think about that when you go into conversations. Your number 3 thing that you have to make sure that you're paying attention to is eye contact. You don't want to stare somebody down to the point of it being uncomfortable, but you want to have good, solid eye contact so that you're believable. If people look away a lot, if they do this when they're talking, or this when they're talking, or anything like this, or especially if you look down at your shoes or look down at your hands if you're fidgeting, you're not believable. That's a sign of an untrustworthy person. So soft, gentle, and consistent eye contact shows that you are a consistent and trustworthy person. Your body language also, number 4, you have got to have your body language down. If you're like me and you talk with your hands a lot, that's fine. But if you're uncomfortable in a situation and you're picking at your fingers or you twirl your hair, I've seen some women twirl their hair. I've seen other people, tap their foot or they have a nervous twitch or something like that. It shows that you're either uncomfortable, that you're bored, or that your mind is really not on the subject matter. And that can make the other person feel less valuable than you know that they are. And that can make them think less of you. So really stay away from that one as well. The one thing that you can't control about a face-to-face conversation is the need to think on your feet. So you can't fully prepare for it. You can have an idea of what it's going to be like, an idea of what you would respond to certain things, but there is a certain degree of needing to think on your feet in the moment. If you're not good at that, there are several things that you can do to make yourself seem more sure, confident, or that you are thoughtful and take time to consider your next statement, which can leave a very positive impression, much more positive than if you have a fast response that's not a good response. So here are a couple of tools that you can use for that. The first way that I like to buy time when I need to think on my feet is to recount the statements that the other person just made. That just means repeat it back to them in your own words. That gives your brain a chance to catch up with what's been said and allows you to formulate a more thoughtful response. It can sound something like, "Hey, Harvey, let me repeat what I understood you to say so that I make sure that I'm understanding you correctly." Number 2, use non-lexical conversation sounds. That sounds super fancy, but actually what it is things like, oh, and things like that. They're really just space fillers. They are sounds that we know what they mean depending upon the inflection and the volume in everyday conversation, but they don't really mean anything. If you're using these when someone's talking, they're also going to feel as though you're really paying attention and that you're tuned into what they're saying. So that can help soften them on the other side and give you a little bit more time to formulate a good response. The third way is to simply ask for time. This takes some authenticity and you have to be really comfortable in your skin when you're doing this. Just honestly looking at the other person and saying, "Sarah, I just need a second to think about that, to come up with a really good response that'll be appropriate." And number 4, use silence. Not the silent treatment, but pauses in the conversation. Those are golden moments that give you a chance to take those deep breaths and really think about what's going on. Formulate not only your responses, but your overall opinions. And decide what you want the end of the conversation to look like. If you know what you want the end of the conversation to look like, all of these tools will help you to walk the path that will get you there. Our 4-part series on communication in business concludes next week with successful business meetings as the topic. So if you want to know how to prepare for a business meeting so you can look like a boss and own the positive impressions in the room, then you are not going to want to miss this. We're going to teach you how to create trust and display your highest confidence without seeming egotistical or overly confident. So you're not going to want to miss that. We ask you to give us a thumbs up if this video has been of any use to you, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you will get a notification when our future episodes drop. We have new episodes every Monday. Also, don't forget to look at the video description. We always pack it full of extra little tools and freebies for you. See you next time.